Okay, so a problem I ran into in beltmatic was that I was very quickly starting to send more builds than there was room for in my intake hub there. So I started working on this sort of diagonal. You can see me doing that stuff. Diagonal storage pattern there. Initially, I thought of this. Well, not initially. I thought of this as my Wittelsbach braid, and you'll see why I call it a braid. But basically, the idea was sort of conceived initially as a Wittelsbach pattern, but eventually I come to the conclusion that it's not really worthwhile to have a whole checker system. I only really need these two rows of diagonals. But then there's the issue of now I've created inner storage units and outer storage units, sort of four per direction. And as I'm demonstrating here, it's not really an option to just have things go around in a loop, because you can see here that this loop never actually makes it to the hub. So this is where the braid comes in handy. As we get rid of that example there. And my idea was to have each storage unit from each direction send a belt to all three non-counterpart storage units. As you can see me do this here, I hope that my explanation kind of makes sense, because it, it's gonna look like a convoluted load of nonsense. It sort of is, but you can kind of see that for every storage unit there is a counterpart that it doesn't get sent to. Um, like this closest one doesn't go to its nearest counterpart, it goes to the other. So this, as you see here, that is the idea, and this is why I refer to it as a braid, because it sort of is. And then I just got to do that for the other directions. Um, there's a very real chance that some of this ends up being time-lapsed. A problem I came across with this pattern is that while these outer storage units now have a way to get rid of some of their input, they still follow a pattern of upwards of 6 belts go in, only 3 belts go out, which means they will overload. And eventually, when I finish showing you this, you'll see that I end up actually going with a different idea, one that I refer to as the funnel braid. And I had to make these outer storage units just to make sure that clogging doesn't affect the sending sections. You can kind of see here this rectangular build that I have going. This is why I had a quote-unquote stray belt that I'm just kind of tagging storage units onto when I'm done. Like, because that's just how the thing works. Here you can see the design I have for the outer belt, the outer perimeter, how that gets sent. It's not exactly a braid, but it sort of functions in kind of a similar manner, I suppose.
Okay, but how does all of this fit together, I hear you ask? Oh, that's lovely. Um, so all of this feeds down into the funnel braid that I just showed you. Certainly hasn't become even more complicated in the meantime, because obviously it's such a well managed machine that it absolutely wouldn't clog under any circumstances. But anyways, these belts that you see here going into this sort of mini braid here, these kind of make this outer perimeter, this sort of square, and you're just gonna have to trust me that this is actually a square, um, with the how you say the central hub in the middle roughly. And inside the square is where I collect all the numbers, and outside of the square is where I do all the math. I wonder, is there anything else I really need to say here? I guess I can show you just how how much more nonsensical this is now. Um, so the idea behind this funnel that you see here is that six upwards of no six belts go in, five belts go out, which in theory should mean that every individual storage unit takes a longer time to clutter. As you can see here, they still are cluttering, and then you have this outer belt to make sure, this outer box to make sure that even though this stuff clutters, the input is not affected. Here is also completely cluttered. But here it can actually go in, and so it is going at pretty much full force. And here there is also a bit more to be done before that clutters completely. So yeah, that's the idea of it. And now that I've kind of shown you this whole shenanigan, it is time for me to start working on my next idea, which is going to be a binary system. I really look forward to figuring out how that's going to work.